I was delightfully surprised to see how many of you are currently full-time caregivers and were able to join us today. But especially because my presentation is especially for you, but also to let others know what it's like to be a full-time caregiver from day to day for a loved one in the home. It'll take me just a second to get set up here. Here we go. Now, for all of you who are full-time caregivers in the home, I recommend you look into the possibility of respite care for yourself. This may be in the form of hiring a professional caregiver to stay in the home for a few days to give you a vacation, or part-time respite care in an assisted living facility where your loved one would go and stay for a weekend. When you are a full-time caregiver, taking this time for yourself is vitally important. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you get sick, who is going to take care of your loved one? And if you don't make time for yourself, you will get sick, whether it be from exhaustion, depression, or both. Your physical and mental health are both at risk. That's why it's so important that you take advantage of the support groups offered in our community through Alzheimer's Tennessee and the Alzheimer's Association. Their information and brochures are included in your toolkit, also known as the red bag. Their support groups meet by Zoom as well as in person, which I think is just wonderful that we have that technology now, that people can remain at home and continue to take care of their loved one. They don't have to call in a sitter to go to a meeting, and you can connect with other people who are also caregivers, and they understand better than anyone else what you are experiencing. They can share their experiences with you and give you suggestions. And also, if you can attend these sessions in person, that gives you the added benefit of some respite time. So that's a plus also. That's something you definitely need to make time for yourself. Now, this is where I would like to share with you my personal experience as a full-time caregiver for 7 years, from 1997 to 2004, for my mother with Alzheimer's disease. In the mid-1990s, when my mother's symptoms were becoming more pronounced, MRI technology was not yet available in our area hospitals to diagnose brain disorders. CT scans of the brain were used to rule out the presence of tumors or indicators of stroke. The diagnosis of Alzheimer's was a process of eliminating all other possible causes of the patient's symptoms and cognitive decline. Several years prior to 1997, and while Mother was in her mid-70s, it became apparent that changes in her memory, personality, and cognition were occurring. Since nothing abnormal showed up on her CT scans, she was diagnosed with suspected Alzheimer's dementia. It began suddenly at first, beginning with forgetfulness, not being able to recall recent events, while long-term memory was unaffected, and the inability of doing simple math. During her yearly checkup with her doctor, he would give her a memory test by reading a short story to her and asking her to relate the story back to him with as much detail as she could recall. The story involved a little girl walking to the grocery store, how much money she took with her, naming the items on her shopping list, the total cost of the purchase, and how much change she received. Then he would ask Mother to retell the story with as many details as she could remember. She did fairly well the first 2 visits, but by the third year's checkup, she had reached the point of recalling that a little girl went to the grocery store, and that was it. That's all she could remember. That's how fast her decline progressed. At the same time, she could no longer balance her checkbook, and the quality of her handwriting began deteriorating. That's when I knew it was time to consult a lawyer and have the power of attorney assigned to me. Now, it's extremely important that you be proactive and take care of all legal matters concerning wills and power of attorney, while your loved one can comprehend the questions that are asked of them, understand the power they are transferring to another person, and are capable of signing their name legibly. If you wait until your loved one becomes symptomatic of early cognitive decline, you must then act very quickly, or it could be too late. I was very fortunate that I acted in the nick of time, while she could still understand the questions the lawyer was asking her and answer them appropriately. That's why it is preferable that you take care of such matters now, today, rather than later. Don't wait until you or your loved one develop symptoms of memory loss. Caregiving for someone with dementia is a very challenging experience, but at the same time, it is very rewarding. Just knowing that out of your love for this person, you have given them a precious gift by devoting your time and energy to protect them from harm and allow them to remain in a familiar setting while receiving a level of care and attention they might not otherwise receive. Now, don't get me wrong, we are fortunate in our community to have memory care facilities that offer excellent care. But let's face it, not everyone has the monetary resources to afford such a level of care. Some of us have no choice but to keep our loved ones at home with us and hope that other family members will help with their care, even if it's just sitting with them while we leave the house long enough to run errands, such as grocery shopping, picking up prescriptions at the pharmacy, and doing our banking. Don't be surprised, though, if you receive little or no help from family members. That's sad to say, but sometimes it's true. A lot of people are apprehensive about staying with someone with dementia because they don't know what to expect. They don't know how to communicate with them, and they feel uncomfortable with taking them to the bathroom. In this case, suggest they come over one day and spend some time with you both so you can walk them through these situations. That way, they will feel more at ease when you are not there. Also, it really helps if your loved one with dementia is wearing adult diapers when you are not there to assist them with bathroom, especially if they are uncomfortable with someone other than you assisting them. One thing you must keep in mind, though, when they are at this stage is breakdown of their skin and bed sores. Be sure to educate yourself about skin care and how to not only prevent this from happening, but how to treat it if it occurs. You must act quickly at the first signs of irritation to prevent the development of an open sore. You need to keep them as clean and dry as possible so breakdown of the skin will not occur. This is an ongoing challenge from the time they become mostly sedentary and especially when they become bedridden. Next, I'd like to go through a few of the different stages of behavior of Alzheimer's dementia in order to prepare you as a caregiver for what you can expect. Some of you probably already experienced some of these firsthand, while those of you who are new at being a caregiver need to know what signs to look for and be planning now how you will handle these situations when they arise. I'd like to refer you to the pamphlet from the Alzheimer's Association entitled Behaviors, How to Respond to Dementia-Related Behaviors. And this is the little pamphlet I'm referring to that's in the red bag. I'm going to begin with anger, anxiety, aggression, and combativeness. As a caregiver, you will need to learn how to recognize the early signs of their frustration and agitation in order to diffuse situations before they get out of hand. This requires you to be proactive and not reactive to their comments and actions. If you react negatively to their anger and anxiety, it will only make things worse and could lead to matters getting out of your control. When looking for early signs of agitation, in addition to noticing their facial expression and body language, another important clue is to look for dilated pupils. I could always tell when my mother was agitated before she ever spoke a word by the size of her pupils and the look on her face. I knew then I had to act quickly to divert her attention onto something else while using a calm, soothing voice when speaking to her. You must keep your cool at all times, no matter what they say to you. Always be thinking 3 steps ahead of them, ready to divert their attention before the situation gets out of your control and they do something to harm you or themselves. If you react to something they do or say and lose your temper, you are likely in for a firestorm from them. Do not take anything they say personally, no matter how powerful. This is the point at which you must realize they have lost their ability to filter what they say. It's heartbreaking, but you reach a point where you have to come to terms with the fact that your loved one may no longer recognize who you are and may turn on you if they are provoked in any way. Always be prepared to change the subject or divert their attention in order to get their mind off of whatever it is they are upset about. Don't try to reason with them because you can't. And arguing with them will only make matters worse. Sometimes I would play act and pretend I heard or saw something out a window or door. Anything to direct her attention away from whatever she was fixated on. Remember this, you must maintain control at all times, not only for your safety, but especially for theirs. Next on the list of behaviors in the pamphlet is forgetfulness, confusion, being suspicious of people, and trouble sleeping. Forgetfulness is one of the early symptoms of cognitive decline. As we age, it is natural to have some degree of forgetting, such as names. It's common to recognize people's faces, but not immediately recall their names, but we do eventually. We tend to forget where we've placed objects, such as a wallet or a checkbook, especially if we fail to put them back in their usual designated spot. Or we forget important dates, such as birthdays and anniversaries. How many of us have regretfully done that? But for a person with Alzheimer's, the forgetfulness is much more profound, such as failing to recognize family members, familiar places, and personal belongings. Forgetting what a common object like a pen or a fork is used for. This is when forgetfulness becomes concerning and causes a lot of confusion for the person living with Alzheimer's disease. Confusion and memory loss can lead them to become suspicious of individuals around them, even to the point of accusing them of theft, infidelity, or other improper behavior. They tend to misinterpret what they see and hear. It's common for people with dementia to have trouble sleeping. They seem to lose track of night and day and tend to wander at night when they should be in bed. It may help to limit daytime naps so they will be sleepy at bedtime. Repetitive actions are very common behaviors as dementia progresses. These consist of repeating words, questions, or activities such as pacing back and forth and fidgeting. I found fidgeting to be one of the most interesting behaviors that my mother exhibited. She would receive a greeting card in the mail and spend literally hours folding and unfolding the envelope and the card. She could take a sheet of paper and fold it so many different ways you would think she was doing origami. This occurred at a time long before fidget aids were developed, which I think are a wonderful invention. Today we have fidget blankets and fidget sleeves at our disposal. I happen to have a fidget sleeve with me today for you to see what I'm talking about. A member of our women's service circle made this. Put it on their arm, like so. And it has all these different textures on it, various objects sewn onto it, such as buttons and bows, ribbons, bells, lace, here, little pom-poms, and little plastic rings I call doodads. When a person with Alzheimer's enters the fidgety stage, they will pick at objects such as buttons and lace on their clothing for hours. And if their arms are there, they will pick at moles and little growths on their skin until they bleed. I'm sure that's why someone came up with the ingenious concept of the fidget sleeve, a knitted device they can wear on one arm to protect it while they satisfy the urge to fidget something with their fingers. The fidget blanket is a small knitted lap blanket, or one made of cloth that has various materials and objects sewn onto them, much like the fidget sleeve. These devices give them something to occupy their mind. Now, hallucinations, both visual and auditory, are possible occurrences as the disease progresses into the middle and latter stages. I say possible because not every Alzheimer's patient experiences these. I found this phase of dementia to be a fascinating development. What I mean by that is that hallucinations are so real to the person with dementia, whether they be things they imagine seeing or something they imagine hearing. One of several hallucinations I remember my mother having one night was she thought she heard music and voices outside the front of our house. She looked out the window and was convinced she saw a large group of people across the street having a party, laughing and dancing, having lots of fun. Well, of course she wanted to go join the party. Who wouldn't, right? Except where she thought there was a party was only a vacant wooded lot across the street. But this lively gathering was very real to her. So she proceeded to the front door, which fortunately was locked with a deadbolt, and tried her best to open the door, but couldn't. We lived on a very busy street, so thank goodness there was no way she was getting past that door, no matter how hard she chirped on the doorknob, because she did not have access to the key. Instead of leaving the key in the deadbolt lock, like you're supposed to in case of fire, I wore the key on a lanyard around my neck and hidden under my t-shirt so she couldn't see it. But she could not understand why that door would not open and was getting very agitated. I had to think quickly and divert her attention by telling her she was missing one of her favorite soap operas on TV, The Young and Restless. I kept recordings on the VCR just for such occasions. You have to think ahead and have a plan in place, because they will keep you on your toes. This occurrence of her trying to open the front door is representative of their desire to wander, leave the house, and roam. I worked with a young lady whose father with Alzheimer's lived in a small town and would get out of bed in the middle of the night, open the front door, and proceeded to walk down Main Street in his pajamas. He had been the town's doctor for many years, so everyone in town knew who he was. The police would spot him on the street and give him a ride back home to his daughter. This is why it's so important you secure all the outer doors of your house so they cannot wander away. But instead of using deadbolt locks on the door, consider using an ankle bracelet that will trigger an alarm if they go through an outer door. Some people have to put devices on their windows too to keep them from getting out. They can be real escape artists. And it's interesting how they become so active at night with no concept of night and day. I had a neighbor up the street from me whose wife had Alzheimer's and would get out of bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, dress herself, and go into the kitchen and proceed to make breakfast. What presented itself as a real problem was she would easily get distracted and leave the kitchen for another area of the house. And her husband would awaken to the smell of food burning on the stove. This is why you learn to sleep whenever they sleep and stay awake when they are up and active, no matter what time of day or night that is. For myself, it was a cardinal rule that I followed every day until she became bedridden. Eventually, they will lose the ability to walk and sit up in a chair, except for short periods of time in a wheelchair. When they become bedridden, this is when you have to keep them turned every 2 hours to prevent bed sores. Bed sores are your arch enemy. They can develop quickly and are very difficult to heal, so you must be proactive. Check them over every day at least once, looking for any signs of redness and irritation of the skin, especially in areas that bear their weight against the bed and in a chair. Make sure to change them often and keep them as dry as possible. If sores do appear, you can contact the doctor's nurse for instructions on wound care or look up information on the internet. If the sores worsen and show signs of not healing in spite of your treatment and care, contact their doctor's office immediately. In closing, let me remind you of all the materials we have provided you, and please pay attention to the many resources available to you as a caregiver. When I was a caregiver, there was no guidance, no support groups, and no resources available to me. I was totally alone, navigating uncharted territory with no clue of what was ahead of me. I must say, I could not have survived this stressful and challenging time and come through it with my sanity intact if it had not been for my deep faith in God. I rested entirely on His promises and trusted Him to be true to His word, and He never failed me, not once. This is going to be one of the most challenging times of your life, and any toolkit for the caregiver would not be complete without sharing God's promise to you in Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. So remember those words when you are bone tired, sleep deprived, and physically and mentally exhausted. May they reassure you that you are not in this alone. Take hold of God's hand and let Him guide you through this arduous journey with your loved one by your side. The journey known as the long, long goodbye. And please take advantage of all the tools and resources made available to you so you can one day look back and say, I'm so glad I took that journey with my loved one. It was the best going away gift I could ever have given them. Thank you.